This video is about academic integrity, or how to responsibly incorporate and interact with other people's ideas in our writing. At ECU Dallas, we use Turnitin to help us maintain high standards for academic integrity and to avoid issues of plagiarism. So in this video, I will go over how to understand Turnitin's similarity report and how we can use Turnitin to avoid plagiarism and become better writers. Before we dive into using Turnitin, it's important to understand the definition of plagiarism, how it can happen, and its consequences. Because different cultures have different perspectives on the subject of originality, I suggest you read the university's academic integrity policy in full, which can be found in the ACU Online Student Handbook. Here's how the handbook defines plagiarism. Intentional or unintentional failure to give credit to sources used in a work in an attempt to present the work as one's own. Basically, plagiarism is using other people's words and ideas without giving them credit as the writer and originator of those thoughts. It is important to protect the thoughts of others, just like we would want others to do for us and our own ideas. Asserting ideas without acknowledging their sources. This is a common error in student papers. Perhaps you jot down some notes or copy and paste a quote from your reading that you want to include in your paper. But after a couple of days, you sit down to write and forget that those notes were direct quotes, so you don't give a proper citation of the author. Taking extra precautions at every stage of the writing process to cite others' words with proper formatting, like including quotation marks around direct quotations, and writing down the author's name and the page number, will go a long way to avoiding this type of plagiarism. Submitting for credit in whole or in part the work of others. This includes submitting work that you have written for previous courses. That is called self-plagiarism. Submitting of papers or projects obtained from any source, such as a research service or an online paper service, as one's own. Online services that provide so-called original papers are sometimes called paper mills, and using them is a serious violation of academic integrity that should always be avoided. Notice, this definition of plagiarism includes both intentional and unintentional uses of others' words as your own. If plagiarism has occurred in a student's writing, the university has an investigation process that can lead to serious academic consequences. That's why it's necessary to take these steps to learn how to avoid plagiarism in your own writing. Now I'm going to show you how to interpret the Turnitin similarity report. When you submit a paper to Turnitin, your paper is compared to many databases of academic articles, student papers, and websites to detect if any part of your paper is similar to what others have already written. Then it provides you with a Turnitin similarity report. First, Turnitin gives each paper a similarity score, which is represented by a percentage and color. Blue goes with 0% similarity, green for up to 24%. Yellow for up to 49%, and so on. The first thing that is important to understand about the similarity report is that the percentage is not a plagiarism score. If you receive a report with 18%, that does not necessarily mean 18% of your paper is actually plagiarized. All it means is that Turnitin has matched about 18% of your paper as being similar to, but not necessarily taken from, other sources. The percentage can be impacted by a couple of variables, including the length of the paper and your professor's Turnitin settings. Depending on those variables, you may get a different score if you turn it in to different professors. With that in mind, the number on its own does not mean much. Even though you might think a low score like 5% is okay, there is no definitive good or bad score because each score must be interpreted. Even a score of 99% could mean that the paper was accidentally submitted and stored in Turnitin twice, and so it shows up as highly similar when in reality it was simply the student's original work. By the way, we offer a plagiarism checker through the Online Writing Center, and if you use our checker, it will not store your paper or count it against subsequent submissions in your courses. Just like the percentage requires interpretation, the colors associated with the report do not necessarily indicate a certain level of plagiarism. People sometimes think only a paper with 0% or a green color are okay, but even a report with a low score could contain plagiarism. For example, if a really long paper is submitted, but one short paragraph or sentence is plagiarized, the score would likely be pretty low, like 5%, and with a green color. But even just one paragraph or sentence taken from another source without acknowledgement is a serious case of plagiarism. So it is up to you to go into the report and look at what Turnitin has flagged to see if there is plagiarism or not. The main lesson here is that interpretation of the similarity report is key. You cannot rely only on the percentage or the color to tell you if there is plagiarism in the paper. In the rest of this video, I will show you some examples of interpreting the report to determine if and when plagiarism has occurred, and how to use the report to help you avoid plagiarizing. First, let's go over the similarity report and what to look for. Once you open your report, you will see the percentage score in the right-hand menu, and then on your document, there are different numbers and colors used to highlight portions of your text that are similar to other sources. Each number and color represents a different source. You can click on each highlight to compare your words to the original source text, which pops up in a text box above each one. Now, let's take a look at how to interpret this information further. As students or professors, you want to be on the lookout for false positives, or highlights that you can disregard. False positives are highlighted text that do not contain plagiarism. This paper has a few phrases highlighted, but upon closer inspection, you can see that these are commonly used phrases and technical terms from the field of study. For example, this highlighted text, "The purpose of this is to examine." This is general language that you will commonly find in many academic articles. The next highlighted phrase, "Guided imagery and progressive muscle relaxation." This is a technical phrase or a name for a particular type of procedure that, if paraphrased, would lose its meaning. These highlights are not plagiarism. Turnitin is just showing us that these are similar phrases found in other sources, and it's okay to disregard them in both of these cases. In this example of a false positive, a student has used a list of variables that they will measure in their research questions. Turnitin flagged these terms as being similar to other sources, but that is to be expected, because the student has responsibly pulled those variables from the literature, and they are consistent with those used in the student's scholarly community. They cannot be changed without losing their meaning. The same concept applies to variables and terms of measurement in tables. When conducting research, it is common to use surveys or instruments that are accepted in the field, or report demographic data as demonstrated in this table, and these are often expected in dissertations and research studies, so this is another false positive. Usually, properly quoted material should not be flagged in the similarity report, but if the settings are adjusted, Turnitin can highlight quoted material. This example is of a block quote, which is properly cited with the author, date, and page number, so this is a false positive. Turnitin settings are also usually set to exclude references. However, if there is no references title, Turnitin will not recognize that these are reference entries and may flag them. We know that according to APA, reference entries must be formatted in this way, and this is not plagiarism. Here is an example from a dissertation. Most table of contents will have similar headings. That is expected since APA and our institutional standards are set so that dissertations follow this pattern. This is a false positive and can be disregarded. Now that we've seen examples of false positives, let's look at some reports that do contain problematic text and instances of plagiarism. One of the most common causes of plagiarism is ineffective paraphrasing. This student tried to give credit to the author with a citation, and they tried to put the source material into their own words, but their paraphrase is still too close to the original, so this is an example of unintentional plagiarism. You can see by comparing it to the original that many of the same words are used throughout this paragraph. A few words were taken out, and some words were swapped for synonyms, but this is not an effective way to paraphrase. Not only that, but the sentence structure, or the order in which the idea is written, is the same in both the original and the student's paper. An effective paraphrase must change both the word choices and the word order to form a new presentation of the same idea. I'll go over an example of good paraphrasing in a moment. Copy and pasting is a clear cause of plagiarism, like this one where you can see large chunks of words in the student's paper are identical to another published source. Even though this student provided citations, and some words have been added or taken out from the original text, there is no indication to the reader that this information is someone else's words, so this is another example of plagiarism. Plagiarism can happen accidentally, even with smaller chunks of text, if a student includes a direct quote and misses the quotation marks, like in this example. You can see the student tried to properly give credit for this quote, so it is likely unintentional. They started it with quotation marks and even provided a citation, but they missed the final quotation marks, so Turnitin highlighted it. This is a case of accidental plagiarism through improper citation. If something is highlighted and shows similarity to another student's submission, Turnitin will not show the original student's work for privacy reasons. If large swaths of paper appear to come from another student's submission, that would require some further investigation to see if plagiarism occurred. This is an example of what is sometimes called patchwork plagiarism, where you can see that the student added or omitted a word here or there, but the bulk of it is the same. This next example is sometimes called mosaic plagiarism, where multiple sources are stitched together, but there are no citations of where the information came from. This type, as well as the other types of plagiarism I've shown, can be avoided in a few ways. First, the student must provide citations for each of the original sources. However, giving citations alone is not enough, since these sentences are still not the student's own words. The next step to correct plagiarism is to paraphrase the ideas that are taken from other sources. Here's how you should paraphrase. First, read the original sentence for understanding. Look away from it, and then put the idea into your own words. In your paraphrase, you can emphasize different parts of the original idea depending on the context of your own paper. For example, this paraphrase emphasizes George et al.'s idea about the lasting impact of Yosemite Valley on America. And, of course, it gives the authors credit with a citation. This is an example of an effective paraphrase. Another way to avoid plagiarism is by incorporating quotes with quotation marks. Any words taken directly from a source in your paper should be marked with quotation marks. In this example, both a quote and a paraphrase are used together to form a new presentation of the original idea. And a full citation is given, including the author, year, and page number that the quote is from. To summarize, here is how you should use Turnitin to help you avoid plagiarism. Check the similarity report and be sure to interpret any highlighted material carefully to determine if those matches show plagiarism. Then, correct any plagiarized portions using these 3 strategies. Make sure to cite the original source fully, making it clear where the idea came from and that it is not your own. Paraphrase any portions that are too close to the original. Put the main idea into your own words and be sure to include a citation. Or you can quote the original text. Just don't forget to include quotation marks around any words that are not your own, and give a full citation for where to find that quote. You have many resources available to you for continuing to avoid plagiarism. Our online Writing Center website is available to all ACU Dallas students. Just log in for access to our APA templates, video tutorials about source integration, and webinars on scholarly writing. You should also use the APA manual, or the citation style that is required, to properly cite any sources in your paper. The APA style website contains helpful information about plagiarism, in-text citations, reference entries, and more. Thanks for watching.